The first thing Emma Sloan registered was the smell, not the sterile, cold scent of the hospital room that had been her final prison, but the sharp, greasy aroma of burnt coffee and cheap vanilla air freshener. It was a familiar, nauseating scent that clawed at her throat, a scent she had inhaled every single morning for 5 years, believing it was the smell of home. She forced her eyes open, her head pounding with a strange, disconnected ache, as if her skull had been cracked open and hastily glued back together. She was staring at a cracked ceiling tile, stained with a water arc that looked vaguely like a rabbit, her heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't the sterile white ceiling of the ICU. This was her old apartment, the one she and Mark had read before they made it. The one she'd scrubbed on her hands and knees while he was out networking. The one where she'd kid his meals and mended his shirts and swallowed her own ambitions so his could flourish. A sliver of a raw morning light cut through the blinds, illuminating a poster on the wall, a motivational quote about hustle. She'd hung in her early 20s, believing in the fairy tale of working hard and being good enough. Emma sat up slowly, the cheap sheets pooling around her waist. Her body felt alien, too light, too young. She looked down at her hands. They were smooth, unlined. The liver spots and the IV bruises were gone. The deep, stubborn calluses from years of working in the W house were absent. She touched her face. The skin was taut, youthful, no jowls, no crow's feet, no hollowed cheeks of a woman dying of a broken heart and a shattered body. Her breath hitched. The digital clock on the nightstand read, October 2nd, 2023. Her chest constricted. It was the day. The day her life as she knew it was supposed to end. But it had already ended, hadn't it? She remembered everything with brutal, unforgiving clarity. The searing pain of the semi-truck's headlights, blinding and white-hot. The screech of tires, a sound that would haunt her nightmares for eternity. The sound of her own bones breaking, a sickening crunch that seemed to echo in her ears even now. She remembered the cold, sterile walls of the ICU, the beeping of machines that were the only things keeping her alive. She remembered Mark's face in the hospital, his eyes already calculating the insurance payout, the value of her life reduced to a $1 figure. She remembered Chloe, her best friend, dabbing her dry eyes with a handkerchief, her diamond bracelet, the one Mark had bought with the money from her invention, the LifeFlow shipping algorithm, catching the fluorescent light, sparkling like a cruel mocking sterile. They'd killed her. The accident was no accident. The brakes had been tampered with. She knew it now with the cold, certain knowledge of a ghost returned from the dead. It wasn't just the affair. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was a meticulously planned murder, designed to look like a tragic accident, so they could collect the insurance money and the profits from her algorithm and live happily ever after on the foundation of her corpse. A cold free, sharper and more potent than any emotion she'd ever felt, bloomed in her chest. It wasn't the helpless, anguished cry of a betrayed woman. It was the clean, crystalline clarity of a soldier who'd survived a battlefield and knew exactly where the enemy was hiding. It was a fire that burned away the last vestiges of the weak, knave-loving Emma Sloan, leaving behind only the cold, hard steel of a woman who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. She swung her legs out of bed, her bare feet hitting the worn carpet. The bathroom mirror confirmed it. Emma Sloan at 24. Her brown hair was lank and lifeless, a result of the cheap dye she used to cover her natural dark blonde, a color she'd been told was too flashy by a jealous Chloe. Her eyes were puffy from the lack of sleep she'd been getting, catering to Mark's every need, staying up late to code while he slept, then waking early to make his coffee and pack his lunch. She'd always dressed down, wearing oversized sweaters and shapeless jeans, believing that her success was a threat to his fragile masculinity. She had made herself small, invisible, so he could feel big. She ran a finger over the dark circles under her eyes. Not anymore. She whispered to her reflection, her voice a rush determined rasp. Never again. She ripped the motivational poster off the wall, the cheap tape tearing the paint. She was done hustling for someone else's dream. She was done being the quiet engine that powered someone else's glory. This time she was going to play to win, and she was going to burn the whole damn game to the ground, if she had to. The apartment door opened, and Mark walked in. Looking crisp in his tailored suit, he was a handsome man with an easy, boyish smile that had once made her heart flutter. Now, it looked like the sickly grin of a predator who had just cornered his prey. He didn't even look at her as he tossed his keys on the counter. The clatter of metal on formica was a familiar, grating sound. Hey, babe, I'm grabbing the laptop. My presentation is in 2 hours. Did you make those edits to the code? I need to show the potential investors the preliminary results. Did you finish the data sets like I asked? Emma watched him, her expression utterly impassive. She knew this version of RK, the arrogant, entitled man who treated her like a useful assistant. He hadn't even asked why she was up so wry. He hadn't noticed her fixed expression, the fire in her eyes. He saw only what he wanted to see, a tool, a cog in the machine of his success. The code is fine, MARK, she said, her voice steady, cold as a winter lake. But I'm not giving you the flash drive. He stopped, finally turning to look at her, his brow furrowing in annoyance. What did you say? I said I'm not handing over the work I did for you to claim as your own, she repeated, standing up from the bed, her posture straight, her chin lifted. You're not presenting anything today. He laughed, a short, disbelieving bark that was meant to dismiss her. Come on, don't be dramatic. This is our future we're talking about. The seed funding from this pitch will change our lives. Do you have any idea how much this means to us? Our future. Emma took a step closer to him, her eyes cold and You mean your future? The one you're planning to build on the grave of my trust. The one you're planning to share with Chloe. The smile vanished from his face. A flicker of panic shot through his eyes before he masked it with practiced indignation. What the hell are you talking about? Are you okay? You're not making any sense. Chloe is your best friend. I'm your husband. What is wrong with you? I'm making perfect sense, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that was far more menacing than a shout. I know about the affair, MRK. I know you've been sneaking around behind my back for months, whispering sweet nothings into her ear while I was slaving away on the code that you're about to steal. I know you're planning to meet her today at the Royale Hotel, room 12, right after the pitch. I know you're planning to use the capital from my algorithm to fund your little art up and finally dump me once the paperwork is signed. It had all been a deathbed revelation, whispered to her by the system admin he'd fired, a man who'd felt a pang of guilt as he watched her die. He'd sent her a message on her hospital tablet, a final act of mercy that had shattered the last of her illusions. The affair, the financial fraud, the tampered brakes, it was all laid out in cold, hard text. Oz' face went pale, the color draining so quickly he looked like a ghost. How, that's your PA Renoid. You've been working too hard. You need to rest. You're imagining things. It's not paranoia when it's the truth, she said calmly. It's not imagination when you have proof. She held her gaze, unblinking, watching him squirm. I know about the secret bank account, MARK. I know about the shell company in the Caymans. I know you've been siphoning money from our joint account for months. You thought I wouldn't notice. You thought I was too stupid, too trusting. He was cornered, and he knew it. His mask of composure crumbled, replaced by a look of naked desperation. Emma, listen to me. It's not what you think. I can explain. I don't want your explanations, she said, her voice flat. I want you out of my life. She walked to her laptop bag and pulled out the flash drive. She held it up between two fingers, dangling it like a piece of trash. You want this? Come and get it. He lunged for her. It was a clumsy, predictable move, filled with the entitlement of a man who had never believed his puppet could break free. Emma sidestepped easily, using his own momentum to send him stumbling into the desk. She wasn't the same weak-willed doormat. She'd spent years in a millinery house, loading boxes, fighting for space, learning how to hold her ground. She knew how to use leverage and weight. You need to calm down, he snorted, regaining his footing, his face red with fury. You're being hysterical. You're gonna ruin everything. Do you have any idea what you're doing? I'm not being hysterical. I'm being decisive. She held the flash drive under his nose one last time. This is the last time you ever get a glimpse of my work. Amarke, you wanted to destroy me. You wanted to take everything I built and hand it to her. Well, congratulations. You just lost the only thing that ever made you relevant. She walked into the small kitchen, a vicious smile on her lips. She could hear him shouting, "What are you doing?" His voice was a high-pitched, panic screech that was FR cry from the suave, confident businessman he pretended to be. She turned on the gas stove. She didn't light it. She just let the gas hiss out, the smell of it filling the air, a sterile, choking reminder of the suffocation she'd felt for years. Then, in one swift motion, she grabbed the flash drive, snapped it in half over her knee, and tossed the pieces into the sink. You just burned 2 years of your life? He screamed, his composure completely gone. His eyes were wild, his face contorted with rage. This wasn't about her. It was about the money he'd just watched disappear. It was about the future he'd stolen, crumbling into dust in front of him. Those 2 years were already a waste. she said, turning to face him. I was just too blind to see it. Get out, Mark. Before I call the police and tell them about the embezzlement. He stared at her, a mixture of hatred and disbelief on his face. He opened his mouth to say something, but she cut him off. I said get out. He grabbed his keys, his suit jacket, and stumbled out the door, slamming it behind him. The apartment was silent, save for the hiss of the gas. Emma walked over to the stove and turned it off. The silence was deafening, but it was a beautiful, liberating kind of silence. She was finally free. But she knew this was just the first battle. The WR was far from over. There was Chloe, the betrayer who had smiled in her face while plotting her downfall. There was her family, the ones who had squeezed every penny they could out of her, who had made her feel like a burden, a failure, an unworthy daughter. They had all played a part in her destruction, and they would all pay. She looked at herself in the mirror again, her reflection a stranger. The pain in her chest was still there, a dull ache of betrayal, but it was being slowly burned away by a fire that was far stronger. It was the fire of vengeance, the fire of rebirth. She had been given a second chance. She wasn't going to waste it. She had one more errand to run before the day truly began. A memory had surfaced, a memory from a lifetime ago, blurry and incomplete, but powerful nonetheless. A man, Liam Wolfe, being turned down for a P-runnership by a sleazy venture capitalist. He was a genius, but he was too young, too arrogant, and the investor, a friend of Inarok, had laughed him out of the building. Emma had been in the building, delivering coffee, and had overheard the entire conversation. The VC was wrong. The idea logistics AI that predicted Mirakat's scarcity was a goldmine. It was more advanced than her own algorithm. It was a lifeline. She knew where he was. A run-down coffee shop in the financial district, where he nursed a single espresso for hours, working on his laptop, waiting for a call that would never come. Emma walked in. She spotted him immediately, the cynical set of his jaw, the sharp intelligence in his eyes. He was even more striking in person. The stress lines on his face were a testament to his struggles, but his aura radiated power, a quiet confidence that no failure could dampen. He was a man on the brink of greatness, and he didn't even know it. She didn't ask permission. She just sat down across from him. Liam looked up, his dark eyes unarrowing, a frown creasing his handsome face. I'm sorry the seat is taken, he said, his voice a low, dismissive growl. No, it's not, Emma said. Your meeting was cancelled. But I'm here to offer you a deal. He let out a scoff, his gaze running over her with a mixture of annoyance and faint curiosity. Look, I don't have time for this. I'm not interested in whatever multi-level rocketing scheme you're peddling. I'm trying to work. You a brilliant coder, she said, ignoring his dismissal. You need $2 million in seed funding to get your rehouse automation platform off the ground. You have a model ready to go, but no network. Your PA rents were small off armors, and you're fighting every old money stereotype in the Silicon Valley handbook. I can get you $3 million by the end of the week. He froze, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. He stared at her, his skepticism battling with his shock. No one knew that he was a ghost, a recluse. His personal life was a closed book. How do you know that? He asked, his voice low, a hint of gull wryness in his eyes. I know a lot of things, she said, a hint of the old, ruthless fire igniting in her eyes. I know you have a meeting with a guy named Geoffrey Wells in 2 hours. He'll turn you down. He's going to say your idea is too disruptive and a risk to the established players. He's a dinosaur. He's going to try to buy you out for pennies on the dollar. Liam leaned back, a muscle in his jaw twitching. He was reassessing her. You're crazy, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Probably, she agreed, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. But I'm also right. You need me. I have the algorithm that will triple your platform's efficiency. And I'm not interested in credit. I'm interested in the money, a 60-40 split. I can get the foot in the door and the capital. You build the platform, I'll build the empire. He read at her, his gaze intense, sea-watching. What's your name? He asked, his voice gruff, trying to regain the upper hand. Emma, she said. Well, Emma, he said, leaning forward, his eyes locked on hers. Let's say I indulge this fantasy. Why would you help a stranger? What's in it for you besides the money? Because I'm a businesswoman, she said, holding his gaze unflinching, and I choose my partners carefully. Consider this a test run. I'll get you the capital. Then we talk terms. She stood up to leave. She'd planted the seed. She just had to let it grow. As she walked out, she saw Liam's eyes follow her, a new, intense look of interest in them. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from Chloe. It was a sickeningly familiar message, a knife in her gut. Lunch at the Royale 1 p.m. We need to talk about your birthday! Zaksa, the audacity, the sheer, unmitigated gall. The woman who had been sleeping with her husband, who had helped plan her murder, was texting her like nothing was wrong, like she was still her best friend. It was the ultimate insult, the final betrayal. Emma's fingers trembled as she typed her reply, but her hand was steady. Her resolve was iron. Wouldn't miss it. See you there, bestie. She looked back at Liam, who was still staring at her through the window, a look of open fascination on his face. For the first time in 2 lives, she felt in control. She felt the cold, arpege of power in her hands. This was just the first move in a war of attrition. The game was on, and she had the benefit of knowing the final move. She walked out into the cool autumn air, the wind whipping her hair around her face. She was Emma Sloan, and she was done being the victim. She was done being the fool. She was done being the one who ended up dead. She was the one who was going to rise from the ashes, and she was going to take everything they had stolen from her. The future felt like a clean slate, and she was ready to write her own history. It was the history of a woman who had been to hell and back, and was ready to burn the world down to get what she deserved. A few blocks away, Liam took out his phone and sent a message to his lawyer. Cancel the meeting with Wells. I have a new lead. He couldn't explain why, but his gut told him that the strange woman in the raincoat was the most honest business partner he'd ever met. He didn't know it yet, but she had just saved his life's work. The hunt had begun. Emma arrived at the Royal Hotel at 12:45. The opulent lobby was a deliberate mockery of her current financial state, but she walked through it like she owned the place. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto polished marble floors, and the air smelled of expensive perfume and old money. She was a raw. She wanted to see the look on their faces before they had a chance to steal themselves, before they could put on their rehearsed performances. She bypassed the restaurant and went straight to the second-floor lounge. It was a quiet, dimly lit space with velvet couches, perfect for illicit meetings. The kind of place where affairs were conducted and secrets were traded. She found a table in the corner, her back to the wall, with a clear view of the entrance. From this vantage point, she could see everything. She could see the lies coming before they even crossed the threshold. At precisely 100 p.m. Chloe entered. She was a stunning brunette, dressed in a designer dress that Emma knew cost more than a month's rent. The fabric was a deep, rich crimson, the color of blood and wine. Her eyes were wide and feigned innocence. Her lips painted a perfect, glossy pink. She looked like a porcelain doll, flawless and empty. But Emma could see the steel beneath. Chloe's act was a perfect mirror of the nice girl persona she'd used to worm her way into Emma's life, all the while whispering insecurities in her ear, encouraging her to dim her own light so Chloe could shine brighter. She was a pure sight, and Emma was finally ready to cut her out. Chloe spotted her and broke into a brilliant, practiced smile. It was the kind of smile that had once made Emma feel safe, cherished. Now it made her stomach turn. "Oh my God, you look awful," she said, her voice dripping with fox concern. "Did you sleep at all? You look so pale. You really need to relax. Are you still stressing about Mayorarke's pitch? You know he's gonna crush it. He's so brilliant." "I'm fine," Emma said, her voice flat, her eyes unreadable. "Just tired." Chloe's, her eyes scanning the room for a waiter, already signaling for service. "Don't worry about Marke. Men are so stupid sometime. You just have to let them think they're in Che Raj. It makes them feel better. Now about lunch, I was thinking the seafood platter. You need to eat something. You're getting so skinny. It's not a good look." Emma watched her, picturing the woman she'd become in the past life. The CEO of a company built on her blood, sitting in her office. We ring the insurance money as a necklace, sipping champagne while Emma rotted in the ground. The image sent a fresh wave of cold fury through her veins. She remembered the way Chloe had cried at her funeral, the way she'd clutched Marke's arm, the way she'd whispered, "She was like a sister to me," with tears streaming down her face. It had all been a performance, a masterclass in deception. "Actually, Chloe," Emma said, cutting her off, her voice low and sharp, "I'm not here for lunch." Chloe's eyes flickered with a moment of confusion. "What? Why, the reservation is for." "I know about the affair, Chloe. I know about Monarch. I know you're both planning to run my company into the ground and take off together. I know everything." Chloe's smile didn't waver, but a nerve under her eye began to twitch. It was a tell Emma had never noticed before, a tiny, involuntary tremor that betrayed the panic beneath the polished surface. "What are you talking about?" "MRK and I, that's absurd. You're my best friend. I think the stress is getting to you. You need to see a doctor," Emma said, her voice low and dangerous, a blade wrapped in silk. "The acting is over. I know you have a key to the off-site server. I know you've been feeding classified data to your cousin who works for a rival firm. I know you're planning to take the seed money Mark gets from the pitch and funnel it into a shell company in the Caymans. The one you set up under the name Aurora Holdings. Chloe's face drained of color. For a split second, the mask slipped, and Emma saw the real woman underneath. A woman who was calculating her next move, her eyes sharp and predatory. A woman who had been playing a long, elaborate game. Who told you that? She hissed, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. I know because I'm the one who finds things out, Emma replied lie, leaning back in her chair. You've been playing the long game, haven't you? You made me dress down, made me feel insecure about my intelligence. Also you could keep me small, keep me quiet, and steal everything I built. You whispered poison in my AR, told me I wasn't good enough, that I'd never be anything without Mark, and I was stupid enough to believe you. But I'm done believing. I'm done being your puppet. You're hysterical, Chloe spat, her composure cracking. No one is going to believe you. You're a nobody. You're just a girl from a trailer park who got lucky. You're nothing. Oh, I don't see if they believe me, Emma said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a burner phone, the screen glowing with a document titled Aurora Holdings, Articles of Incorporation. I have a copy of the shell company's charter, the encrypted folder, and a few text messages between you and Mark that would ruin both of your careers. I'm not going to the police. I'm going to the press. The business page of the Chronicle loves a story about a conniving businesswoman and her pathetic lover. It's like clickbait for the finance bros. They'll eat it up. Chloe lunged across the table, trying to grab the phone. Emma was faster. She pulled it back and stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. The sound echoed in the quiet lounge, drawing a few curious glances from other patrons. Get that from me. You'd have to kill me, Chloe. And I think we both know you already tried that in a past life. She said it with a chilling calmness that made Chloe recoil, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. You're insane. I don't know what you're talking about, Chloe stammered, but her eyes were locked on the phone in Emma's hand. The threat was real. It was a nuclear bomb, and Emma was holding the detonator. Maybe I am, Emma said, but I'm a sane woman with a very big bomb. Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go back to Mark, and you're going to tell him the deal is dead. The investors pulled out. He's a nobody. Tell him you're done. You're going to cut all ties, financially and personally. You're going to leave him, and you're going to disappear from the tech scene. If I see your face at any networking event, I will release the encrypted file, and trust me, I have a copy with a dead man's switch set for 24 hours. She watched the color drain from Chloe's face. The dead man's switch was a bluff, a terrifyingly effective one that she'd ran from a tech thriller she'd once read. But Chloe didn't know that. She saw only the cold, unwavering certainty in Emma's eyes. You're bluffing, Chloe said weakly, her voice trembling. Emma simply held up the phone, the screen still glowing with the incriminating document. Chloe sank back into her chair, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Her perfectly manicured nails clawed at the velvet armrest, leaving tiny, desperate Marks. Fine. I'll do what you say. Just please, don't release that. Emma didn't say another word. She turned on her heel and walked away, leaving the lounge and the remains of her best friendship behind. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. She knew Chloe was already dialing Mark's number, her voice shaking with panic. Let them panic. Let them tar each other apart. It was the least they deserved. As she stepped out of the hotel, the world felt brighter, sharper. The knife in her back was gone. She had pulled it out and used it as a weapon. The autumn sun was warm on her face, and for the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an unknown number. Emma Sloan, a deep, resonant voice said. It was Liam Wolf. How did you get my private number? I have my sources, she said, walking down the street, a triumphant smile playing on her lips. Let's talk about the logistics of that $3 million. I have a plan. She'd already started the process. She used her knowledge of the future to short a stock she knew would tank that afternoon. The returns would be enough to collateralize the bank loan for Liam's seed capital. She explained it all to him, the intricate moves she was making in the financial market, the way she was manipulating the system from the shadows. That's brilliant, he breathed, a hint of awe in his voice. You just manipulated the rocket based on a tax bill change no one knows about yet. How did you even know about that? The information is public, she lied smoothly. You just have to know where to look. I want to meet in person. I'll come to your office. I have a few ideas for the platform. My office. It's a start-up in a house. It's not exactly impressive. It's a mess. Perfect, she said, her voice due arm for the first time. I like to be where the work is done. As she hung up, she knew she had done more than just make a deal. She had forged an alliance with a man who could become a powerful ally. A man who had the vision and the skill to match her own. This was her empire now. Marquet Chloe. Her abusive PA rents. They were merely the first obstacles on her path. There would be more. There were always more, but she was ready. That evening, she went back to her apartment. Marquet. His side of the closet was half empty. He'd taken the expensive suits and left the cheap ties. He texted her a string of garbled, angry messages about her mental state, about how she was ruining everything, about how she'd regret this. She deleted them without reading them. He had left his laptop on the kitchen counter. In a moment of pure ruthlessness, she logged in, found his unpublished business plan, and, in a fit of cold vengeance, sent it to a random email address she'd created for spam. She then deleted his entire business file. This wasn't petty, this was surgical. She was erasing him from her life, one piece at a time. She went to bed feeling more powerful than she had in years. She lay in the DAR, stay rang at the ceiling, replaying the day's events in her mind. The confrontation with Muarke, the takedown of Chloe, the deal with Lime. She was no longer the victim. She was the architect of her own destiny. The next morning, she woke up to a message from Liam. It was a link to a news article. Mysterious angel investor revives logistics start-up. The article quoted an anonymous source, but it was Clay Raleigh referencing them. Her move had already made waves. The tech world was buzzing with speculation. Who was the mystery investor? How had they known about the tax bill change? It was the kind of publicity money couldn't buy. Her phone rang. It was her mother, a voice from her past that was like a cold draft. A reminder of a life she was determined to leave behind. Emma, what is this I hear about you and Mark? You're a disgrace to this family. You need to fix this. Your father is so disappointed in you. You're supposed to be a homemaker, not a businesswoman. It's shameful. You're embarrassing us, Das. Emma listened to the rant, her expression unreadable. Her mother's voice was a familiar drone, a chorus of criticism that had haunted her childhood. She remembered the way her mother had always favored her younger brother. The way she'd made Emma feel like a burden, a mistake. She remembered the bruises, the shush words, the nights she'd cried herself to sleep. She didn't hang up. She didn't yell. She just waited until her mother paused for breath. I'm sorry, who is this? Emma said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. What? It's your mother. Don't be ridiculous. I'm sorry, Emma repeated. I don't have a mother. I have a woman who gave birth to me and then tried to use me for an allowance. I have a father who sold me to the highest bidder. You're nobody to me. Don't call this number again. She hung up, feeling a sense of liberation so profound it was almost intoxicating. She'd just cut the last string of her old, pitiful life. She was finally free. Later day, she was walking to Liam's W house when a black SUV pulled up beside her. The tinted window rolled down. It was him. He was driving. Get in, he said. It wasn't a request. She got in. The car smelled of leather and clean cologne, a stark contrast to the stale air of her past. He was a magnificent enigma. The EARI morning light illuminated the sharp lines of his face, the dark intensity of his eyes. He was a man who commanded respect through sheer presence alone. I did what you said, she said, breaking the silence. The stock market executed my order. I'll have the funds by tomorrow. We're on track, he said, not taking his eyes off the road. I've been watching you, Emma Sloan. You're not who you pretend to be. You're a lot smarter than you let on. His voice was low and intense. I don't trust people easily. But I'm offering you a chance. I want to see your algorithm. It's in my head, she said, touching her temple. I can show you the principles. He turned to look at her, his gaze burning into her soul. Then show me. He pulled the car to a stop. He wasn't taking her to the W house. He was taking her to a private airstrip. A sleek private jet was waiting for them, its engines humming with quiet power. Where are we going? She asked. Sterile, her heart racing. To an investor meeting, he said. My invest. The ones I've been trying to get in front of for 6 months. They want to see the technology. The technology I don't have yet. He looked at her, a daring challenge in his eyes. You said you had the algorithm. Now prove it. We're doing a last-minute pitch. Can you handle it? This was the high-stakes game she'd signed up for. She was about to step into the lion's den. But she wasn't the prey anymore. She was the hunter. She was the architect. She was the one with the plan. I'm ready, she said, her voice a steel trap of resolve. She wasn't just ready. She was born for this. She stepped out of the SUV. the wind whipping her hair around her face, and walked toward the jet with Liam by her side. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it was hers to shape. She didn't know what the meeting would bring. She didn't know if Liam would truly trust her. But she knew one thing for certain. She would never be a victim again. She would rise, she would conquer, and she would make them all pay. The private jet was a testament to the future she was building. Plush leather seats, a mahogany table, and an attendant offering champagne. Emma took a glass. The COO liquid a stark contrast to the fire burning in her chest. She was flying to a meeting that would define her new life, and she was going in with the ultimate cheat code, a memory of what was to come. The hum of the engines was a steady, reassuring rhythm, a reminder that she was moving forward, leaving the wreckage of her old life behind. Liam sat across from her, his eyes fixed on his laptop. He was reviewing his pitch deck, his brow furrowed in concentration. He was a man of few words, but his intensity was palpable. It was a different kind of power from Mark's empty boasts. This was the quiet confidence of a man who had a vision and the skill to make it real. He tapped his fingers on the keyboard, occasionally muttering something under his breath. His focus absolute. Emma watched him, studying the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes narrowed when he found a flaw in his presentation. He was a perfectionist, and she respected that. "You're nervous," he said, not looking up. "I'm not nervous," Emma corrected him. "I'm calculating. There's a difference." He glanced at her, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. "You're right. You're not nervous. You're terrifying. You haven't even blinked in the last 10 minutes. "A compliment," she said, the ghost of a smile on her lips. "I'll take it. The investors Gerald Vance and his team," Liam explained, his tone turning serious. "He's old money. He controls a portfolio worth about $15 billion. He's skeptical of new tech and especially skeptical of new people without a pedigree. He's going to try to TARSEPERT. He'll ask about the algorithm, about the patents, about the supply chain. He'll test your knowledge. He'll try to trip you up. He's a SHARK." "He won't," she said simply. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I know his questions before he asks them," she said. She had seen this meeting before, in a memory that was both a blessing and a curse. She knew the way Gerald would tilt his head, the way he would tap his finger on the table, the way he would try to undermine her confidence with a single, cutting rem. She had already rehearsed her answers 1,000 times in her head. He closed his laptop, his full attention on her. "You're strange. You know that." "I'm not strange," she said, holding his gaze. "I'm just a woman who has a lot of practice seeing the future. Now, let's go meet this dragon." The meeting was held in a towering glass building overlooking the San Francisco Bay. The conference room was vast and impersonal, with a table that could seat 20. The walls were floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. On the other side sat Gerald Vance and his entourage, a team of analysts, lawyers, and a man Emma recognized as a rival of Mark's. It was a firing squad. The air was thick with the scent of expensive cologne and the faint, metallic tang of ambition. Gerald was a silver-haired man with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. His eyes were pale blue, cold and calculating, and they swept over Emma and Liam with the dismissive assessment of a predator sizing up his prey. He was impeccably dressed in a bespoke suit, his tie perfectly knotted, his cufflinks gleaming. He didn't offer a handshake. He just gestured for them to sit. "Mr. Wolf," Gerald said, his voice a low rumble. "Your proposal is ambitious. But ambition is cheap. A lot of people have ambitious ideas. Few people have the competence to execute them. I've seen 100 stereotypes like yours. Most of them fail within the first year." Liam began his pitch, his voice calm and authoritative. He outlined the platform's potential to revolutionize warehouse logistics, using AI to predict supply chain disruptions before they happen. He spoke about efficiency, cost savings, and competitive advantage. He was brilliant, his passion evident in every word. But Emma watched the faces of the analysts. They were unmoved. They'd heard it all before. They were waiting for him to stumble, to make a mistake. Then came the attack. Gerald leaned forward, his eyes like chips of ice. "Your platform is impressive, Mr. Wolf, but your numbers are based on a proprietary algorithm you haven't demonstrated. What's the efficacy rate? Your team is small, and you have no track record of successful deployment. In my you're a decade away from making this viable. Why should I invest in a pipe dream?" This was the moment. The pivotal attack she had seen coming from a lifetime away. The room fell silent, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. Liam opened his mouth to respond, but Emma was faster. Emma spoke up, her voice cutting through the room's tension like a knife. "With respect, your assessment is based on outdated metrics. The current model relies on historical data, which is reactive. Our algorithm is proactive. It doesn't just react to a shortage. It predicts the conditions that lead to it. It's not a pipe dream, it's the future. And you're either going to be PA-rod of it, or you're going to be left behind. Gerald's eyes snapped to her. And who are you? I'm the architect of the algorithm, Emma said calmly. Mr. Wolf is the visionary. I'm the execution. The one who makes the impossible possible. You're a child, Gerald scoffed. Let me guess, a recent grad who read a couple of books on machine learning. You don't have the experience to understand the complexities of this industry. I'm a woman who can save you $50 million in logistics waste over the next 2 years. Emma fired back, her tone unwavering. You recently lost a major contract with a Texas-based retailer because your supply chain failed to account for an impending shortage in raw materials. The shortage was caused by a port strike in Japan, a strike that was predicted by a small-time analyst on Twitter a month before it happened. Our algorithm would have flagged that, Vance. It would have saved you that contract. It would have saved your reputation. Froze. His analyst exchanged uncomfortable glances. He leaned back in his chair, reassessing her. His fingers drummed on the table, a rhythmic, unsettling sound. I have a memory for data, she said, lying with a perfectly straight face. I have analyzed your company's public losses for the last 5 years. You've lost Mayraket Shire to your rivals because you are reactive, not proactive. You wait for disasters to happen, and then you scramble to fix them. We're offering you the key to being proactive. We're offering you the ability to see the future. She then pulled out a small tablet and laid it on the table. She opened the program she and Liam had been working on in a feverish few hours on the jet. It was a simulation of the Texas retailer scenario. She ran the program. It flagged the Japanese port strike 3 weeks before it happened. The data was perfect. The screen glowed with charts and projections, a visual representation of the future she was offering. This is a proof of concept, she said. We're asking for $3 million. In return, we're giving you a tool that will prevent the next disaster. We're not asking you to invest in a company. We're asking you to invest in a shield for your empire. This isn't a gamble, it's a guarantee. Gerald stared at the simulation. He tapped his finger on the table for a long moment. The silence stretched, agonizingly long. Then, unexpectedly, he broke into a smile. It wasn't an arm smile, but it was a smile of recognition. A smile that said he had found something I've been in this business for 40 years, he said, his voice gruff. I've seen a lot of kids with a lot of ideas. But I've really seen someone with the guts to walk into a room and tell me where I've been failing. You're either brilliant or very, very lucky. And I don't believe in luck. A bit of both, I think, Emma said, holding his gaze, unflinching. He extended his hand. $3 million. We'll get the lawyers to draw up the paperwork. But I want to see a working prototype in 4 months. And I want you on the advisory board, Ms. Sloan. I want to see what you can do. The deal was done. She'd slayed the dragon. As they walked out of the building, the city lights reflecting off the glass, Liam pulled her aside. He was looking at her with a mixture of awe and respect. You just predicted a port strike 3 weeks out and walked that old RK into a deal, he said, shaking his head. I've been trying to get him to say yes for 6 months. You did it in 10 minutes. You didn't even blink. He's a businessman, Emma said. I needed to see a return on investment. I gave him one. It's simple math. It's more than that, Liam said, his voice low. You read the whole room. You knew what they were thinking before they said it. It's like you've lived this meeting before. It's like you knew exactly what he was going to say. Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. He was perceptive, far more than she'd given him credit for. She changed the subject, looking out at the glittering skyline. This is the beginning, Liam. We're not just building a platform. We're building an empire. But this is just the first step. She looked out at the spiraling bay. The city of San Francisco laid out before her like a kingdom to be conquered. In the distance she saw a familiar face. RK. He was getting out of a cab across the street, looking harassed, his tie askew, his face pale. He was meeting with another potential investor, a man who was also a rival of Liam's. He looked lost, desperate. A shadow of the man he used to be. She watched him, a cold smile on her lips. She had the money, the PA Rutner, and the momentum. He had nothing. She had taken everything from him, and she hadn't even broken a sweat. It was a beautiful feeling. That night they flew back. The city lights glittered below them, a sea of stars that seemed to stretch into infinity. They landed at the private airstrip, the world feeling like it was theirs for the taking. As they were about to part ways, Liam stepped closer to her. He was so close, she could feel the heat radiating from him. His eyes were dark and intense. "See reaching hers," he said, his voice a rough whisper. "Who are you? Really, where did you come from? You're not like anyone I've ever met." "I'm just a woman who knows what she wants," she said, looking up at him. "And I always get it. That's all you need to know." "And what do you want?" he asked, his voice dropping an octave, his gaze dropping to her lips. She paused. This was the first time she'd been alone with him, without the pressure of a deal hanging over them. The air crackled with an unspoken tension. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, a response she hadn't anticipated. "I want to win," she said. "And I want to do it with people I can trust." She looked into his eyes, a flicker of vulnerability she hadn't shown anyone in 2 lifetimes. "Don't make me regret this, Liam." He reached out, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her AR. The touch was electric, sending a jolt through her entire body. "I won't," he promised. "I'm not a fool. I know what I have. I know what you are. You're a force of nature, and I'm not going to stand in your way." He pulled away, leaving the promise hanging in the air. As she walked to her car, her hand still tingling from his touch, she knew the win was more significant than just the money. She had won a partner, a friend, and, perhaps, something more. She had taken the first real step toward building the life she deserved. The revenge against Mark and Chloe was just the opening chapter of a much grander story. She got in her car, her hand steady on the steering wheel. The engine purred to life. She looked in the rear view mirror and saw her own reflection. A stranger rider. A woman who had climbed out of the ashes and was ready to burn the world down. She smiled. It was a cold, calculating smile, the kind that promised pain. As she drove away, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. It was a photo. A photo of her and Liam leaving the building. A photo that had been taken from a distance. A photo that was clearly meant to be a threat. Beneath it, a single line of text. "We know what you're doing, Emma. Stop now, or there will be consequences." Her grip tightened on the steering wheel. The FAR that had once realized her was gone, replaced by a cold, burning rage. They thought they could threaten her. They thought they could scare her. They had no idea who they were dealing with. She typed a single response, "Come and tries." Then she tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and drove into the night. The DUIR was FAR from over. It was only just beginning. Weeks turned into a blur of progress. The double rehouse space that had once been Liam's cramped startup was transformed into a sleek, functional office. Industrial chic, they called it. Exposed brick walls, polished concrete floors, and state-of-the-art workstations lined up in neat rows. The smell of sawdust and paint had been replaced by the crisp scent of new electronics and freshly brewed coffee. They recruited a team of brilliant engineers, all of whom were drawn in by the siren song of the algorithm and the two charismatic founders. Emma was the glue, the calm center of the hurricane, a sharp contrast to Liam's occasional intensity. She was the one who mediated disputes, who smoothed over egos, who kept the ship sailing straight. Her company, Apex Solutions, was officially a thing. It wasn't just a name on a paper, it was a force to be reckoned with. The stock rocket moves she'd made in her first days had more than collateralized the loan. She was independently wealthy, but the real prize was the influence, the power, and the platform. The money was just a tool, a very useful tool. Her days were a blur of meetings, code reviews, and industry events. She had shed her old, mousy-appy rants like a snakeskin. Her hair was a sleek, dark blonde, cut in a modern style that framed her face like a halo. She wore designer suits that were tailored to fit her like a second skin, each one a statement of power and confidence. She was no longer a shadow. She was a force of nature. People turned their heads when she walked into a room. They whispered her name with a mixture of awe and fear. She had become the woman they all wanted to be, and the woman they all feared to cross. She saw Mark once at a tech mixer. He was trying to get a meeting with a venture capitalist she knew personally. He looked haggard, his once immaculate suit wrinkled, his eyes rimmed with exhaustion. He was a shadow of the man he used to be, a cautionary tale whispered among the startup crowd. She'd intercepted him, her smile disarmingly sweet, her eyes cold as steel. "How's the job search going?" she asked, loud enough for the people around them to hear. The crowd fell silent, their eyes turning toward them like moths to a flame. He flinched, his face flushing a deep, "Emma, I'm doing great. Actually, I'm about to secure a massive round of funding. Bigger than anything you've ever seen." "Oh, really? From who?" she asked, pretending to be fascinated, tilting her head in mock curiosity. "From a firm you've never heard of," he sneered, trying to regain his composure. "They're international. They have deep pockets. I hope so, she said, leaning in conspiratorially, her voice dropping to a whisper. Because I just had lunch with the managing PA, partner of every major firm in this city. He told me that no one is willing to touch you with a 10-foot pole. Apparently your reputation precedes you. It's a shame, really. I hear your business plan is unoriginal. A Reborn copy of ideas that were already outdated 5 years ago. His face went pale, the color draining so quickly he looked like a ghost. She'd done it again. She'd systematically, socially, and professionally neutered him. He was a walking cautionary tale now. Running to any man who thought he could betray a woman and get away with it. She watched him stammer, watched him try to formulate a response, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. She didn't look back as she walked away. She was done with him. He was yesterday's news, a footnote in the story of her rise. Chloe was a different story. Chloe was a ghost. She'd vanished after the hotel confrontation, possibly leaving the country. Emma didn't twit. She was out of sight and out of mind. The threat of the dead man's switch was a permanent leash, a collar that kept Chloe from ever showing her face again. There were rumors, of course. Whispers that Chloe had been seen in Paris, in London, in some small, obscure town in Italy. But Emma didn't waste a single thought on her. She was irrelevant. Her family was also a non-issue. After her mother's last call, they'd sent her a series of angry, bewildered messages, accusations, pleas, threats. She'd responded to none of them. They were a chapter of her life she'd closed permanently. They had wanted a servant, not a daughter. They had wanted a cash cow, not a human being. She was no one's servant anymore. She was no one's meal ticket. The true turning point of her new life came one night after a PA article, a grueling day. The launch was approaching, and the pressure was immense. Every detail had to be perfect. Every line of code had to be flawless. Liam and Emma were the last ones in the office. The city lights twinkled outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, a million tiny stars scattered across the da rockness. The atmosphere was cheerage, not with the pressure of a deal, but with something else, something unspoken. We did it, Emma, Liam said, leaning against his desk, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Apex is the talk of the industry. You've made a friend of a venture capitalist who's more powerful than a king. We're on the map. We're unstoppable. We did it, she corrected him. I couldn't have done it without you. You're the visionary. I'm just the architect. That's not true, he said, his voice softer, his eyes fixed on her. You would have done it with or without me. You're a force of nature. You're the most driven person I've ever met. You don't need anyone. But I'm glad you chose me. He walked toward her, his steps slow and deliberate, the glass of whiskey forgotten on the desk. I don't know how you do it, he said, but I'm still rotting to understand why the old Emma Sloan was a myth. You're a phoenix, reborn from the ashes. You rose from nothing and built an empire. You're incredible. She looked up at him, her heart pounding. Don't analyze me, Liam. I'm not analyzing you, he said, his voice a rough whisper. I'm admiring you. There's a difference. He reached out and took her hand. His fingers were Dibby arm, his touch gentle. She felt a jolt of electricity shoot up her arm, a sensation she hadn't felt in years. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Emma, he said, his voice dropping to a low, intimate murmur. I know you've been through something. I know you've been hurt. I can see it in your eyes. The walls you've built, the armor you are. But I want you to know that you don't have to face the world alone. Not anymore. She felt her walls begin to crumble, the carefully constructed defenses she had built around her heart. She had sworn she would never trust anyone again. She had sworn she would never let anyone close enough to hurt her. But Liam was different. He wasn't RK. He wasn't her family. He was something else entirely. I'm not looking for a savior, she said, her voice really a whisper. I'm not offering to save you, he said, his thumb tracing a gentle circle on the back of her hand. I'm offering to walk beside you. I'm offering to be your PA Rotner. In business and in everything else. She stared into his eyes, watching for the lie, the deception. But she found none. She found only sincerity, earth, and a deep, unshakable loyalty. She rotted, but he cut her off. You don't have to answer now, he said, releasing her hand and stepping back. Just think about it. And know that whatever you decide, I'm not going anywhere. I'm in this for the long haul, with you. He turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the middle of the empty office, her heart racing, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She didn't know what to feel. She didn't know what to think. All she knew was that for the first time in a very long time, she felt something other than cold, burning rage. She felt hope. She spent the next few days in a daze, her focus fractured, her thoughts constantly drifting back to Liam. She buried herself in work, trying to distract herself, but it was no use. He was everywhere. In the office, in her thoughts, in her dreams. She was reviewing the final launch documents when her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Emma Sloan, a clipped, professional voice said. This is Detective Miller from the San Francisco Police Department. I'm calling in connection with an investigation into the activities of one Mark Thompson. Your name came up as a former associate. Emma's blood ran cold. What kind of investigation? We have reason to believe that Mr. Thompson was involved in insurance fraud and embezzlement. We also have evidence that he may have been involved in a hit-and-run accident that resulted in serious injury. We'd like to ask you a few questions. Emma's mind raced. This was unexpected. She had assumed Mark would just fade away, a pathetic footnote in her past. She hadn't anticipated this. She hadn't anticipated that the police would come knocking. I'm happy to cooperate, she said, her voice steady, but I have to water on you. I'm not exactly his biggest fan. I have a lot of information that might be useful to you. Would appreciate any help you can provide, the detective said. Can you come down to the station tomorrow morning? Of course, she said. I'll be there. She hung up and stared at the phone, her mind spinning. This was a new variable, a new twist in the game. She didn't know if it was a threat or an opportunity, but she was determined to find out. She walked into Liam's office and closed the door behind her. He looked up, his expression shifting to concern when he saw her face. What's wrong? He asked, standing up. You look pale. What happened? RK is being investigated, she said, her voice flat. Insurance fraud. Possibly a hit and run. The police want to talk to me. Liam's eyes narrowed. Do you know anything about it? I know everything, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. I know he was planning to kill me. I know he tampered with my CAR. And now I have a chance to prove it. Liam walked around the desk and took her hands. Then we'll face it together, he said. Whatever happens, I'm with you. You're not alone anymore. She looked into his eyes and felt a wave of gratitude so powerful it almost brought her to her knees. For the first time in her life, she had someone she could truly trust. Someone who would stand by her side, no matter what. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. He pulled her into a gentle embrace, his arms wrapping around her like a shield. She closed her eyes and let herself feel safe. Let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she had finally found her happy ending. But she knew better than to get too comfortable. The door was far from over. There were still enemies in the shadows, still threats lurking just out of sight. She had won a battle, but the door was still raging, and she had no intention of losing. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with determination. Let's go to the police station, she said. It's time to finish this. Liam nodded, his jaw set. I'll drive. As they walked out of the office together, Emma felt a surge of power unlike anything she had ever felt before. She was no longer the victim. She was no longer the prey. She was the hunter. And she was ready to bring down her enemies, one by one. The police station was a grim, gray building that smelled of stale coffee and desperation. Emma walked through its doors with her head held high, her heels clicking against the worn linoleum floor like the ticking of a countdown clock. Liam was beside her, a solid, reassuring presence, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. She had given her statement, calmly and methodically, laying out everything she knew about Mark's fraud, his embezzlement, and the tampered brakes that had nearly cost her her life. The detective had listened, his face impassive, his pen scratching against the notepad. When she finished, he had nodded and thanked her, promising to follow up. Now, she stood outside the interrogation room, watching through the one-way glasses. Mark sat alone at a metal table, his hands cuffed, his face a mask of defeat. He looked small, diminished. The man who had once made her feel so insignificant was now nothing more than a pathetic figure in an orange jumpsuit. The irony was not lost on her. You did the right thing, Liam said, his voice low. He deserves everything that's coming to him, Emma said, her voice flat. But it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like closure. There's a difference. She turned away from the glass, unwilling to waste another second on the man who had once been her husband. He was no longer her problem. He was a ghost from a past life, a cautionary tale she had left behind. As she walked out of the station, the cool autumn air hit her face, crisp and clean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It was beautiful. It was hopeful. It was the kind of sunset she had never noticed before, too busy fighting for survival. Emma, Liam said, stopping her on the steps. There's something I need to tell you. She turned to face him, her heart suddenly pounding. What is it? He took a deep breath, his eyes sea-watching hers. I know about the algorithm. I know it's not just a coincidence that you knew about the port strike, about the tax bill, about everything. I know you've been hiding something. And I don't see. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. What are you talking about? I'm not stupid, Emma, he said, his voice gentle but firm. I've been doing my own digging. The accident. The way you knew things you couldn't possibly know. The way you looked at me that first day like you'd known me for years. You were different when I met you. You were already fighting a duerrar I didn't understand. And I'm not saying I know what happened. But I know you're not the same woman you were before. And I don't see her, because the woman you are now, the one standing in front of me, is the one I want by my side. I love you. The words hung in the air, heavy and fragile. Emma felt Tar's prick at the corners of her eyes. She had spent so long building walls, so long protecting herself, that she had forgotten what it felt like to be seen, truly seen for who she was. Lime, she whispered, her voice trembling. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he said, stepping closer. Just promise me you'll stop running. Promise me you'll let me in. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to betray you. I'm not him. She looked into his eyes and saw the truth of his words. He was different. He was real. He was the man she had been waiting for her whole life, even when she didn't know it. Okay? She said, her voice barely audible. I promise. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly against his chest. She closed her eyes and let herself feel it, the wrath, the safety, the hope. Later that night, they stood on the balcony of her penthouse appartement, looking out at the glittering city below. The stars were beginning to emerge, scattered across the vast, dark sky like diamonds on velvet. The champagne in her hand was cool and crisp, a perfect counterpoint to the warmth in her chest. We did it, she said, her voice full of wonder. Well, I actually did it. Apex is a success. Mark is in jail. My family is out of my life. Not over? Liam said, turning to face her. Just beginning. This is the start of our story, Emma. Not the end, she smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Our story, she repeated. I like the sound of that. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her heart stopped. She had seen this moment in her past life, but it had been a nightmare, a farce, a cruel joke. This time it was different. This time it was real. Emma Sloan, he said, dropping to one knee. I have never met anyone like you. You are the strongest, most memorable woman I have ever known. You have faced unspeakable pain and risen from it like a phoenix. You have built an empire from nothing. And you have done it all on your own. But I'm asking you to let me be rod of it. I'm asking you to let me be rod of you. Will you marry me? She stared at the ring, a simple, elegant diamond that caught the moonlight and scattered it into 1,000 tiny rainbows. It was perfect. It was everything she had never read to dream of. Yes, she said, her voice breaking. Yes, I'll marry you. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she felt a surge of joy so powerful, it almost knocked her off her feet. He stood up and kissed her, a soft, gentle kiss that promised a future full of love and happiness. As they pulled apart, she looked down at her hand, at the ring that symbolized the beginning of something new. It was a stark contrast to the cheap, tarnished band she had worn with Mark, a constant reminder of her own worthlessness. This was different. This was a symbol of hope. She walked back into the appartement, her artful. The familiar scent of vanilla air freshener drifted from the kitchen, a ghost of her old life. She had hated that smell once, associated it with the suffocating misery of her marriage. Now it was just a scent, a memory, a reminder of how far she had come. She walked over to the window and looked at her reflection. The woman looking back at her was a stranger. The lank, lifeless hair was gone. The dark circles under her eyes were gone. The fear, the doubt, the self-loathing, all of it was gone. In its place was a woman of strength, of determination, of unshakable confidence. A woman who had faced death and emerged victorious. Emma, Liam's voice came from behind her. What are you thinking about? She turned to face him, a smile on her lips. I'm thinking about how lucky I am, she said. How lucky I am to have a second chance. How lucky I am to have you. He walked over to her and wrapped his arms around her waist. The luck is all mine, he said. You're extraordinary, Emma. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it to you. She leaned into his embrace, letting herself feel the warmth, the safety, the love. She had spent so long fighting, so long surviving, that she had forgotten what it felt like to be happy. But now, in this moment, she was happy. She was at peace. The city lights glittered below them, a sea of possibility. The future was wide open, full of promise and adventure, and she was ready to embrace it. Ready to live the life she had always deserved. As she stood there, holding Liam's hand, She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the betrayal, the pain, the death, and the rebirth. She had risen from the ashes like a phoenix, stronger and more powerful than ever. She had faced her demons and conquered them. She had found love in the unlikeliest of places. And she knew with absolute certainty that she would never be a victim again. She was a survivor. She was a fighter. She was a woman who had taken control of her own destiny and refused to let anyone take it from her. Lime said, his voice breaking through her thoughts. Are you ready for the next chapter? She turned to look at him, her eyes full of warmth and determination. I was born ready, she said. Let's go live our lives. They walked back into the apartment, hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future held. Together, the past was behind them, a closed chapter in a book that was now being rewritten. And the story was only just beginning. Emma Sloan had found her happy ending. But more than that, she had found herself. And that was the greatest victory of all.